This is the Minister's Crucible. I'm Fred Rochester. Thanks for listening. The last days. There's a lot in the news concerning the events that are pretty much coming together to show to us that we are in the last days. And even if we do not have the events that show that we are in the last days, we do have God's word on it. And so there's various scriptures that we can start from. There is so much information in the Bible about the last days, but we're going to not try to condense, but we're going to put as much information out there as possible, because we know that there are a lot of people that are wondering about the last days, and they're gleaning from many credible sources that can teach us so much about what the last days are about. And so I'm going to start in 2 Timothy chapter 3. And this will give us an idea as to what we're experiencing as far as the events of the last days are concerned. Paul says, "But know this, that in the last days, perilous times or dangerous times will come. For men will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, unloving, unforgiving, slanderers, without self-control, brutal, despisers of good, traitors, headstrong, haughty, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, and having a form of godliness but denying its power, and from such people turn away. For of this sort are those who creep into households and make captives of gullible women, loaded down with sins, led away by various lusts, always learning and never able to come to the knowledge of the truth." Paul said a mouthful by the Spirit of God to give us a clear indication as to kind of things that will be events, if you will, in people's lives that become indicators to us that we are in the last days. Notice in verse 1 again that in the last days, perilous times will come, or dangerous times will come. We are living in perhaps some of those dangerous times that we are in. For instance, Russia, when they invaded Ukraine, touted the fact that they are willing to use nuclear weapons. Usually in certain conflicts, especially small asymmetrical conflicts, small unit conflicts and things of that nature, there is no one that puts nuclear weapons on the table, simply because of what took place in 1945, in August of 1945, when the first and only atomic bomb attack fell on a nation from the United States. Fat Man and Little Boy, we know all about that. For those who are history buffs, we see that in during that period of time, President Truman did not want to send U.S. troops on the shores of Japan, knowing that it would be a bloodbath, especially from Tarawa, Okinawa, and Guadalcanal and Kwajalein, all of those battles in Midway. And of course, of December 7th, 1941 on Hawaii, it was a simple bloodbath. And so an island hopping plan was initiated by Admiral Nimitz and General Douglas MacArthur. And that strategy worked. But when it came time to put troops on the ground in Japan, the United States feared of a tremendous bloodbath and losing more Americans than could be tolerated. And so the atomic bombs were created for that purpose, and it shortened the war. Yes, hundreds of thousands of lives were lost on the Japanese side, but you got to remember, they started this war. And is it justified? Well, it appears that it is justified simply because the American people could not tolerate losing more American lives over that conflict. And so it's very important to understand and put in perspective that when a decision is made to launch a nuclear weapon, all bets are off. Fast forward into the 1950s and the 1960s. There was a mission of strategic bombers with nuclear weapons on board that would fly near the Soviet border on a constant 24-hour basis. So there would be planes in the air, U.S. planes in the air with nuclear weapons to destroy the Soviet Union, because the Soviet Union at that time had acquired the capability of nuclear arms. And so they too started flying their nuclear weapons. And so it was the terminology that was used back then was called MAD, which of course means mutually assured destruction. In other words, if you attempt to destroy me, I will destroy you. And so leading up to this point in time, the time that we're living in today, never before has anyone put on the table nuclear weapons as a means to put off the NATO nations from invading Russia. And that's a misnomer. There was no plans on the table to invade Russia. We really don't have any strategic or material value gained in taking Russia. And so Putin is really off his rocker with that kind of mentality. Nonetheless, these are still serious and dangerous times that we're living in. Now look at the scriptures here below. Look at verse 2 again. For men will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money. And see, that we see as a constant end time sign, that men will be lovers of themselves. We all love to look in the mirror. We all love to receive the praise of men. We all want to praise ourselves and so forth. And so we see that in the last days, men will be lovers of themselves. The second thing is that they will be lovers of money. Now, how much money do you need? Everybody says, well, it's not enough. If you had $1 billion, that's not enough. If you had $1 trillion, that's not enough. But the love of money, Paul says in 1 Timothy chapter 6 and verse 10, for the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. So we're living in a time where men are lovers of money, and men do not care what they will do to you to get it. You are collateral damage. You are just a number. And so these are the times that we're living in, and it is increasing greatly. Boasters. We all like to boast about ourselves and always talk about ourselves, boasting. The tongue is a boaster, the book of James chapter 3 tells us. The word boast means to brag. And so when we brag about ourselves, then you know, that's nothing but pride. And Satan has done that himself. But it also says proud. And so proud means an individual that is haughty, showing oneself above others, overtopping, conspicuous above others, preeminent. The Bible tells us in the book of Proverbs chapter 16 that pride comes before destruction and a haughty spirit before the fall. And so be advised that when you see these levels of pride in our lives or in the lives of others, these are serious times that we're living in. Blasphemers. What is a blasphemer? One that takes the name of the Lord in vain. One that just uses the name of the Lord slanderously or with reproach or abusive. And so we have to be very careful not to fall in the line of the world that does these things. And it's not good to blaspheme the name of the Lord. And it's very serious. It's a very serious charge. It's not to be taken lightly. Also, there would be individuals that would be disobedient to parents. We have children that are disobedient these days. When you train up a child in the way that it should go, when it is old, it shall not depart from it. We see that when we fail to train our children, to teach our children, and to chastise our children when it is needed, not in an abusive way, not in a way that provokes them to anger, but when they cross that line and you've used all resources to get the message that they are not to do this, then you have to use the means that God requires in the scriptures, because ultimately when the child gets old, they won't depart from it. They'll remember that chastisement, and it will serve a purpose, because if and when they do have children of their own, they will have children that will be in a position to do things that are disobedient to parents. And because your parents trained you, you will train your children. But we have disobedient to parents. If you're wondering why all these children are killing all these people and robbing people and stealing and so forth, partly because they are raised in single family homes where there is no male figure in the house. Or perhaps they're doing it anyway because there is a male figure and a female figure, mother and father figure in the household, but they do it anyway. Well, the Bible tells us that they are disobedient to parents, and the way that you chastise that, the way that you correct that, is with the rod. And so we also see that unthankful, unholy. I mean, have you ever walked up to a person and you did something for them and they never thanked you for it? And so we're living in that time. Unholy, man, are we living in unholy times, especially in the month of June. The month of June is, according to homosexuals, Pride Month. Believe me when I tell you, there's nothing proud about being a homosexual, because you're doing that which is contrary to what God has created. And there's nothing proud about being an individual that have STDs, sexually transmitted diseases, which also is AIDS, cervical cancer, things of that nature. So there's a lot of unholiness, but it's not just in the homosexual community. You have individuals that fuel abortion by way of fornication and adultery. Adultery and fornication is the fuel for abortion. And so the Lord instituted the marriage for the purpose of love, the purpose of procreation. And when it is done within the scriptural boundaries, there's no need for abortion, and there's no need for any of that mess that goes along with it, especially sexually transmitted diseases. If you ask a married couple that have stayed together for life and have never entertained adultery, you will find that they have never transmitted a sexually transmitted disease between each other. Why? Because they never, ever entertained adultery with another person. Unloving. Well, that's a big mouthful right there. When a person is unloving, this individual does not love. For instance, like Cain, he didn't love his brother Abel, because Abel brought a sacrifice that was received by the Lord, and Cain's offering was rejected. And so Cain had hatred in his heart for his own brother and killed him. And so the word unloved or unloved, rather unlovers or unloving, rather, it says here, hard-hearted towards kindred, hard-hearted toward kindred, without natural affection, without natural love. And so unforgiving is another one. Unforgiving. You don't want to forgive anybody for anything, even if it's small or large. You have reached a point in your life that you do not want to forgive that individual. The Bible tells us in the book of Matthew, and also in the book of Mark, that if you do not forgive one another, neither will your heavenly Father forgive you your trespasses. And so that's Mark chapter 11 and verse 25. Slanderers, without self-control. Oh boy, without self-control. In other words, you can't control yourself. You can't control your tongue. You can't control your eyes. You can't control your hands. You can't control your feet. Uncontrollable. Brutal, despisers of good, traitors, headstrong, haughty, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. And if you ever want to find out about lovers of pleasure, all you have to do, and if you want to locate yourself, all you have to do is look at the parable of the sower, because the parable of the sower really gives us an indication as to the kinds of pleasure that men are involved in, and especially those who are in the body of Christ. Lovers of pleasure. This is part of the parable of the sower, where if you go down into Luke chapter 8, and verse 14, now the ones that fell among thorns are those who, when they have heard, go out and are choked with cares, riches, and pleasures of this life, or of life, and bring no fruit to maturity. And so it's very important that we recognize this. So in the last days, in perilous times, dangerous times, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having a form of godliness but denying its power. You know what that form of godliness is? The form of godliness is when you pretend to be holy and you're not. You're a hypocrite when you should be for real. You want to talk about being real in your sin. For those who are in the homosexual community, you want to be real to yourself. Well, for the body of Christ, for those believers that are in the body of Christ, we need to be real before God and never play the kind of hypocrite that the devil wants us to play. Having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof, simply means you look holy, you act a part, but you deny its power. Because if you're living in the power of godliness, then you will not commit sin. You will not blatantly cross God's word. And so having a form of godliness but denying its power is part of the end times. From such people, turn away. Now, if you go back up into verse 2, for men will be. And then if you drop down into verse 6, for of this sort are those who creep into households and make captives of gullible women loaded down with sins. And so these kinds of men that I've read out of Paul's writing, shows us that these kind of men are the ones that go into these households where women are gullible women that are gullible or foolish or silly. Loaded down with sins, led away by various lusts. And these men and women all are always learning and never able to come to the knowledge of the truth. You see, you can learn a lot in the scriptures, but when it comes to the knowledge of the truth, it means that you are a practitioner of God's word. You put into practice what God said in his word. So we see that these signs are critical signs that we need to pay attention to. Of course, there are other signs that we are to pay attention to as far as the events like, Russia, Ukraine, Syria, the Golan Heights, and the United States and France and all that. The events that are happening in those nations, they're funneling us into the last of the last days. But we must always be mindful of the fact of the kind of heart attitude that is revealed that tells us so much about what the last days are truly about. It's about the heart. It's about where you stand as far as the scriptures is concerned. And if you're standing outside of Christ, and if you're not walking in the way that Christ commands us to walk, then it is clear that when you begin to do these signs, not only are you a sign to us of the last days, but you should be aware of the fact that you are a sign to yourself. Finally, I want to talk about Matthew chapter 7 and verse 21, because in dealing with Matthew chapter 7 and verse 21, it shows us the kind of individual that have a form of godliness, but denying the power. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, shall enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father in heaven. Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in your name, cast out demons in your name, and done many wonders in your name? And then I will declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you who practice lawlessness. And so having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof, these are the kinds of individuals that are denying the power thereof, and they will not enter the kingdom of heaven. Jesus will look at them and tell them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you who practice lawlessness. You've been listening to the Minister's Crucible. I'm Fred Rochester. Thanks for listening.